it's important that we think about the Lane family and who they were and what they believed in and what they wanted to achieve for this property. And I've known Bill and Lane for years. They were both friends and campmates of mine in Bohemia. And I know they were very strong conservationists and really believed in that. I really have to commend the efforts of staff here in spending countless hours working through all these things, and you've seen the results, which are extraordinary. And what they've accomplished, I think, is certainly noteworthy. They have reduced the maximum floor area ratio significantly from what it is now. They have reduced the maximum impervious surface by a significant amount. And I think we have to focus on the terminology in the conservation easement, because what it says is to retain in perpetuity predominantly current use. Doesn't say totally. It says predominantly. Mm-hmm. And I would submit that by the time we get through here, you'll have to agree that it's gone beyond predominantly being consistent with what's there. I would say that this comes as close as you can to precisely meeting all of the terminology of this conservation easement and of the town ordinances. There are some questions that have been raised by some. One of them has to do with this path over Lot 101 to the lone oak tree. It suggested that that's some kind of structure that's violating the provisions of the conservation easement. I submit that's not the case at all. As has been pointed out by staff, there's no grading, there's no gravel, there's no edging. It's just decomposed granite. And you're all familiar with that. You spring down next door, they use that. And it's commonly used in state parks, federal parks, as the least invasive and most conducive to maintaining the natural beauty. And there's an added advantage when you think about it to preserving this vast open space of this lot by confining the traffic just on this one path out to the oak tree and back. You are eliminating or at least greatly reducing the possibility that people are going to be trampling all over this place. So I think that's a plus factor rather than a minus factor when it comes to conservation. A pickleball and tennis court been suggested, well, why don't you combine them? That's been tried. A number of clubs around here have tried that and have abandoned it as being impractical. And in this case, you have to think about this tennis court is a clay court. It's not a paved court. The pickleball, which is much smaller, is paved, but the tennis court is clay. So I think that's an important consideration. The pool area, as was pointed out, is slightly larger, maybe 1% over what the current area is. But the good thing about it is that the pool that's there now is, one of these odd shaped things. There's no way to cover it. By building this new rectangular pool, they can cover it, which lowers evaporation. It also lowers the the heat required if you're gonna heat the pool. So it's definitely a step in the direction of conservation to do what they're doing with the pool. There's one condition in here that does bother me a little bit, and I think should concern you, and that is that, suggesting that the right to put in a vineyard at any time in the future should be surrendered at this point. And that doesn't compute to me. First of all, a vineyard is specifically included under the language of the lane's conservation easement. So why take away the future possibility of something which is specifically allowed under the recorded conservation easement? You don't have to give it to them now. Obviously, you're not asking for it, but you certainly would have the authority in the future, if you choose to exercise it that way, to prevent somebody from having a vineyard then. But why penalize them now and say, you got to give that right up for all time? It just doesn't seem right to me or fair to do that. There's one other thing that does kind of concern me a little, and I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but there is this provision in there that if the town gets sued, the owners have to defend, indemnify, and hold them harmless. Now, I know there's some case authority out there that maybe that is enforceable and maybe not, but I don't even want to get into that. And I'm not, all I'm doing is at this point, in case this comes up in the future, just saying it for the record that we object to that one condition. That's all. I don't want to make a big deal out of it. So in conclusion, again, I'd like to thank the staff for their extraordinary efforts. I think that the final result here conforms as closely as could possibly be imagined to the spirit and intent and the letter of the conservation easement. So I hope that you will approve the staff report and you can move on. Thank you.
Constantine, you have any other, presentation or your architect?
Yes, I'm Dan and I are gonna split sort of the direction, so my name is Constantine. I'll let on later at the New Mexican Service Open Game from Bureau quickly. So I'm the owner of 880 Westridge, and here the person who did the project for you. The photo over there that you see is what the view that most residents have experienced. Right, it has the story folds up, so you can see, even though bright orange lines are not very visible because we have set back the structure further than the phone structure. And none of the 100+ folks in the before sharing more about the proposed plans myself, I want to introduce the members of the team that are available here today. You already met John. Dan Spiegel is from SAW, the architect on the project. He will later share a bit about the process for designing the house. And joining us by Zoom, I believe, is Millie Kontorovsky from Cape Rock. That's correct. He's the civil engineer on the project. My landscape designer, Tom Slope, is unfortunately ill and not able to attend today. Dan and myself can put questions related to landscaping plans for the site. So as for myself, I grew up in a rural town in Germany, surrounded by woods. That's probably from Alex, feels kind of familiar. I'm the son of 2 high school teachers. My dad unfortunately died a few years ago, but he played tennis until he was 93. And so I think I got the love of the game from him. My mother's still alive and well at age 90. She said she's been surprised that the planning phase of the project has taken so long. And she wanted me to share with you that she would like to see the house grow. So I hope we can get it. I live in Palo Alto. I'm the father of 2 girls. My 19-year-old is working locally as an EMT, and my 23-year-old is an elementary school teacher in Miller Humboldt. Besides tennis and pickleball, I enjoy hiking, gardening, mentoring students, and birding. So why did I choose Potomac Valley and decide to build? We moved to Palo Alto for the schools, but I haven't really been either in Palo this fall. In my mid-20s, after graduating from Stanford and before getting married, I rented a cottage in the South Hill and really enjoyed, had fond memories of the views and the peace and quiet of crossing Potomac Park. I did miss the community after. There was no school in South Hill, no grocery store, which is really what drew me. Even though with all the hills was more familiar, I ended up in Chippewa Valley, but then I could sense of community. We currently live in a nice house in Palo Alto, but it's someone designed for themselves. So it has extra rooms that we don't use, not the style, that's not fond of, so that is really exciting to build in one home. I selected the house in Palo Alto because it shares the fence line with the local community school. This was very important for my kids. So before I turn it over to Dan, I would like to share with you the 6 reasons why I selected 88 Westridge and how these 6 reasons have impacted the proposed plan to see in front of you today. So I love the natural beauty of the property. I would like to keep it in this natural scenic and open-space condition, whether or not there's a conservation easement. That is my natural instinct. And we plan to go beyond conserving and actually reduce what is there and the property's condition. We're planning to reduce the impervious surface area by almost 7,000 square feet and the floor area by 3,500 square feet. For context, 3,500 square feet reduction in floor space is equivalent of a typical family home. Here you can see the main building pad. Here you can see the building pad with the outline of the new house in green overlaid on the existing structure, which is not green. You can also see that we're proposing to locate the pool in the same flat area where the lanes had their pool. And we're proposing to put the tennis and pickleball courts in the existing flat area that is already used for recreation. I'm excited that if approved, I'll finally be able to play tennis. In my teens, I played on the International Youth Circuit and moved games here instead. Play courts are also better on the knees. As you get older, you can appreciate that. We feel we can work with the existing contours of the property, and I've directed the team to do countless iterations to keep grading for minimum. Lily from K-Props has said many times she's never seen a project like this, but I'm still upset with keeping the content. So lots of iterations went in there. As you heard from staff, it's 810 cubic yards. Since we're reducing the impervious and floor area so significantly, actually 300 of that is used to fill in the missing foundations, the missing asphalt that we're needing. So that's actually what 300 of the 810 goes in, plus to fill in the one side. So the second reason I love the property is the oak. Oaks are the quintessential German tree, and there are well over 100 on the property. If you approve the plans today, over 80% of the property will remain protected as oak studded. The proposed landscaping is 2.5% of it. We're proposing to keep all trees except one that is considered. And we also have taken great care to move the structures away from the existing canopy trees, as you can see in the slide. The third reason for selecting the property are the views. To expand the views, we're proposing to reduce the structures on the main building pad and also slightly roading to open up the views to the west. Screening for our neighbors is also very important for us. I took the initiative to personally visit all immediate and even some non-adjacent neighbors to hear their concerns and take photos that then could inform our plans that regards to screening. One of the oaks that provided screening for my neighbors at 177 Goya unfortunately died from oak death and had to be removed. I got the arbor report, the Westridge approval, I got the town permit, I went the whole thing. And fortunately, nature has already provided 3 oaks growing in the same site. They're obviously smaller than the past oak, but they will over time grow and fill with the canopies that we need. In the meantime, to mitigate until that takes place, we're proposing 2 more shrubs to make sure the residents at Goya are not leaving the impacted. These 2 shrubs really quickly grow to 10 to 12 feet wide and 12 to 15 feet, which should cover at least the wall. Maybe not completely the roof, but the walls should be covered. We're also proposing to change the existing off-white color with an LRD of 89 to something more sandy looking, which has an LRD of 88. This should also significantly reduce the impact from it. We have taken care to set the structure further away from slopes to reduce visibility and also enhance fire safety. The front setback is 313 feet, which is well above the required 50. And the side setback is 137 feet, far exceeding the required 20 feet. In fact, the side setback is 50 feet more than that of the existing structures. I would like to fit the new house to fit well into lived environment. I'm a huge fan of nature, and I like my gardens to be not too manicured, but let plants grow naturally. General note about that. Nature does not do 90-degree angles, so that's why you see lots of curves in the proposed plans. We're leaning into natural materials, as staff mentioned, the clay tile roof, wrought iron work, and painted tiles in the interior, which you can't see, but also has a bunch of exposed wood beneath there. A significant benefit of the Mediterranean architecture is increased fire safety. I love the outdoors and keep things to the minimum, so only dining room for the house is outdoors. There's no other indoor dining room. It has some amenities, so in cold and stormy days, you can swim. The fifth reason for selecting 880, and also a guiding principle of the design you see today, which Dan knows very well, is that I'm looking for 880 as an ideal place of refuge from the sun. My philosophy is to take no more space and resources. And the proposed design is like this design. For example, the main house only has a single bedroom, and the living room is only 19 by 19 foot. Due to this philosophy, I also deleted typical features of core property like this, like the one in Solar. The sixth and final reason I like the property was its history. Bill Lane was a pivotal figure in Potola Valley and advocated for nature and American life. Then I admire his wife Jean as a passionate gardener with a kind heart and an impact all beyond the village. The existing structure is hacienda style, which originated in Andalusia. There's still a sign at the entrance today that says La Quinta Home. As you can see from the plans, this hacienda style was the main inspiration for the proposed design. I grew up in Greece, attended Stanford, and traveled extensively in Spain. The Mediterranean architecture naturally worked itself into it. The main entry has a Jesus Maria bell, which you were asking about, which was made from the original 1920s model and can still be seen at Newton Farm. From my conversation with neighbors who knew the lanes well, I learned Bill was both brash and had specific ideas, but was also practical, which was one of the reasons the property did not qualify. I walked the property with the groundskeeper of the lanes and also interviewed a resident who was actually given away at her wedding by Bill and frequently gardened with me. I also spoke extensively to Brenda, who grew up on 80, the youngest of the 3 kids and the only one who's still living. But Philadelphia. To build on what's there was important to us. So we're using the existing building pads, the existing driveway, and also the location for the geofence. There was some discussion about the geofence. This is actually the very location where they had it in. I have a photo that I got from the groundskeeper. So I don't have a different about now. On my computer somewhere. I guess I could find it. I shared it with him. This plan also borrows the idea of a tool room with a toilet for workers, which was a design of the lane. So having a sink and spots for a mini fridge. I'm proposing many of the same plans Jean enjoyed, minus the 2 big lawns in the area and having. So for the closing remarks on the process, let me, for the next 2 minutes, so we can keep it short since I'm kind of going long here, about this project.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Good evening, I'm Dan Spiegel, I'm one of the principals at SAW. I'm the architect for the project. Our office is based in San Francisco, but I grew up in Menlo Park. I attended college at Stanford, and I've always had a deep connection with Portola Valley, including several past and current projects that are active. I've had the pleasure of working with Constantine on this project for the past 2.5 years, and you can probably tell from his presentation, he's one of the most engaged, thorough, and conscientious clients we've ever encountered. The design you see here went through countless iterations with the design team, especially Tom and Millie, and as well as close collaborations with town staff, such as longtime planner Dylan Parker. Dylan had also worked on the previous proposal for this property from the prior property owner, so is uniquely familiar with the site and the nature of the conservation easement. At the start of the process, we asked if the tennis and pickleball court would be compatible with the conservation easement. Dylan and Laura Russell said that we would need to submit a whole site plan in order to determine that. It took additional work, but we appreciated the nuances of the situation and the attention to the big picture detail as well, the big picture as well as the details. The key was adhering to the conservation easement, which seeks to keep the property in its natural, scenic, and open space within. During several pre-application meetings, we relocated the courts to an already existing recreation area, and per Dylan's request, also fit the pool and deck into the same area where the Lanes had built theirs. We submitted this proposal 18 months ago. I know this has been a challenging time for the town and want to acknowledge our gratitude to the folks here today working on the project who are part of the effort to keep things on track. With that said, this process has been uncharacteristically slow and laborious. We're now working with Brandon, a third planner, and Terrence, the fourth director of planning, since we've been on the project, and extra thank you to Terrence for being the first staff member to visit the site. All of the delays have been costly for my client, property tax and drainage requirements and countless revisions, increasing prices. In addition, the town is not collecting fees when projects are stuck. In the meantime, this beautiful property has remained stuck in review processes for 5 years since the Cincinnati's originally purchased it. Constantine did more extensive neighbor outreach than I've seen on any project that I've worked on. Over 20 neighbors attended a meeting we hosted in January of 2023, where we showed plans, made adjustments in response to comments, and which resulted in an approval from last. We hope that we can conclude this thorough and lengthy process tonight, bringing a new home and family into this community. Available for any questions.
Thank you. ASCC, have any questions of the applicant? I'll open this up to the public. So if you could raise your hands, so I know who'd like to speak, then I can start from one end to the other. Why don't we start on this side and we'll go to this side. Andy? Yes, please. And turn it on.
Okay, Andrew Thompson. Our family has lived at 840 Westridge since 1993, and we were obviously very good friends and knew the Lanes very, very well. First thing I want to comment on is Constantine, and I really want to encourage us to welcome him to our community. He's one of the calmest, most collaborative, most community-minded members of our town that we ever had the pleasure to know. And Constantine, we really hope that you have a great time living in Portola Valley. It's a great pleasure for us to have a neighbor again. I also want to comment on the Lane's intent with respect to the conservation easement. When they were contemplating setting up the conservation easement, Bill, who was also a very collaborative guy, came to see me, and he said he had something very serious to talk about. And I thought, oh dear, they're going to build a house right in our view corridor across the meadow. And I thought, well, that's fine. Brenda might like a place to live. And no, Bill wanted to know whether he could get our permission to designate 2 of his lots as a conservation easement. And I have to say, I was a little bit surprised, asking for my permission for that. And of course, I wanted to say yes, because that was a wonderful thing. The one question we had for Bill and Jean was that if they designated this property as a conservation easement, that they would reassure us that the one lot that was designated for building could be developed and that we would have a neighbor and that the land could be used appropriately and we wouldn't end up with just an empty piece of 10 acres right next to it. And that indeed was their intent. And they assured us very much that they wanted someone who would cherish the land, live there, build a house, and use it in the way that they had done so. And so that was really, really important to us. We did not want to not have a neighbor. So we are extremely happy that we will have one. Just a couple of other comments that I'd like to make with respect to the landscaping. There is some controversy, I believe, about what should or should not remain with respect to areas of the conservation easement. We would really like the poison oak to go. It is an extreme fire danger, and when it burns, it creates a very toxic smoke that can be very dangerous to fire protection individuals. So we cleared all the poison oak, we clear all the poison oak from our property every year. And we'd like that to happen, notwithstanding that perhaps some people feel that that's animal habitat or something else. I'd like it to go. And one other point we might make with respect to landscaping that we should just note, we've lived here for many, many years. What we have discovered, we were asked to plant some larger trees, is they don't grow very well. And all the volunteers have grown much faster, they're much larger, they're much healthier. And our landscaping now is dominated by many trees that frankly weren't there when we moved to the property. So volunteers are really, really good things, and they're much better than transplanting big trees. That's it. Constantine, I hope that you are very successful.
Next, please. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hello, I'm Jeff Epstein. I live at 127 Pinion Drive with my wife Sue, and we live less than a mile from the property. When Constantine bought the property, he reached out to us, and we are very much in support of this new home. We think it's just a beautiful design. Can't wait to have to go visit it. And I also wanted to say that Constantine has been the ideal neighbor in terms of how he's included all of the neighbors in Portola Valley, the walks that he sponsors here, even though he doesn't live here yet, and having everyone involved in the planning. So both because the home itself is gorgeous and the way Constantine has included everyone involved, we're very supportive of it and hope we can improve it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Turn on the microphone, please.
Good evening to all. Mary Jack on Westridge Drive. We have submitted quite a few written items about some details that I would call neighbor concerns. But this is more of a conservation concern that I'm speaking to, the easement for this evening. Bill and Jean Lane are the reason we're all here tonight. They knew change and development was coming to our valley, and they wanted to ensure that their property in the heart of it would continue to evolve at nature's pace in perpetuity. Many here tonight are imagining what Bill Lane would be saying and thinking about this proposal. And after years of thoughtful consideration, he put in plain language what he wanted. All else is speculation. The easement is the Lane's legacy. It speaks for them in clear, undeniable terms. Our objections to the proposed landscape plans are not personal, and they're not neighbor concerns, and they're not about fear of change. We welcome a new house and conforming landscape changes. The current proposal could be modified to provide just that. The Lanes were egalitarian and community-minded. They loved and spent time on the trails throughout Portola Valley. No private trails needed. They knew that tennis courts are part of the wider community, including at town center, promoting involvement, socializing outside the home, no pavement. The application's proposal for development for recreational areas has a footprint 2.5 times the size of the residence. This amount of new recreational area is in fact non-compliant. 6,000 square feet of man-made trails, not mentioned because they're less than 4 feet, so they're not counted anywhere on the plan. Almost 9,000 square feet of fenced sports courts, 10 feet high tennis fences, including a prohibited asphalt pickleball court and metal frisbee golf baskets installed into the hillsides. All conflict with the easement specifics and prohibit, which it does prohibit any surface alteration for recreational use and prohibits grading and excavation beyond the development of the residence and the driveway. Far-fetched arguments have been presented that the trails need to be protected from the guests ruining the integrity of the land. And a second amendment, I agree with you, John, that to actually think of changing the easement to allow for to change what was on the easement seems unreasonable. Conservation easement is not aspirational. It's a legally binding document, and the town is obliged and obligated to defend, not to reinterpret and not to rewrite. The easement directives lead, and then the development choices follow, not the other way around. We ask the committee for a continuance that defers any decisions about what development is allowable until the opportunity has been provided to hear the legal expertise of a conservation easement and land use law professional, which we do have. Thank you.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, Rob Jack, Portola Valley. I'm on West Ridge. I think the property under discussion is subject to a recorded conservation easement. And the effect of this easement is much greater than has been suggested here tonight. This easement is worded to conform to California Civil Code Section 815, and this code section includes a notation that a conservation easement, I quote, may be negative in character, meaning that an owner may not be able to alter the property in the way that he or she wishes. Thus, a buyer of an easement property would be advised to exercise due diligence to determine the exact restrictions on the property and then decide whether those restrictions would align with the buyer's vision. Now, it's our opinion that throughout the planning process, the importance of the conservation easement has at every turn been minimized and diminished. The current owner and design team appreciate and follow the wording of the easement regarding the single-story residence and the driveway. However, they do not appear to recognize the specific restrictions regarding the landscape. The applicant and the design team have taken the position that no means some, that no means just a little bit, that no asphalt means let's add an 1,800 square foot pickleball court surfaced with asphalt, no surface alteration for recreational uses, which is taken directly from the conservation easement, section 4.3, means let's add over 6,000 square feet of man-made trails on these pristine meadows. And any suggestion that no excavation is required for forming those trails is false. The architect has indicated that 2 to 3 inches of topsoil will have to be removed. He was very careful to include in the submission that no rock would be removed, and that would make it okay. This past Friday, we have a staff report dismissing the specifics of the conservation easement, overly deferential to the applicant, even suggesting overriding Portola Valley stringent municipal code required maximum impervious square footage area for the property. So we urge the committee to honor the open space gift to the town, which is the legacy of the lanes. We ask you to seek further legal understanding of the restrictions, particularly the very specific prohibitions that the conservation easement, which you have all looked at, contain. And we ask you to please disallow those proposed recreational landscape features which are clearly prohibited by the easement. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda?
Is it on? Okay. So I'm a very nervous public speaker and I didn't really want to talk, but I kind of feel like I need to because my father and mother would be so blessed that this man is on their property. And I'm sorry, I'm getting really choked up here, but he is exactly the type of person they would want. He reaches out to the community, he organizes things, he talks to the neighbors. It would be so upsetting to him what's happening right now with what's happening. Sorry, but I know you love my dad, but he would not have been happy. My parents' whole idea of a conservation easement, they love nature, was exactly what's happening right now at Patola Valley. They had 3 beautiful lots. The whole reason for the conservation easement was so no one could ever subdivide. They wanted a person to build a family home there. They wanted another family to come and enjoy that property. And I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but it's kind of been concerning what the last 2 people had said, because that is not at all what my parents would have felt would have been a neighborly, I mean, you know, we adored you, you and your family. But I think and John, you know, has known my dad for 50+ years. And I think they're looking down saying, okay, this man has done all his due diligence as much as he can. And as long as, you know, they wanted a very nice family person to live there. Okay. Good evening. My name is Brenda Lane Monks. The property in question tonight was my family's home where I grew up. I'm here tonight in support of the current homeowner's plan as submitted to the ASCC. I've been following this process from the beginning, but not in detail. I don't know about the plans. I don't know about a lot of the details other than I've been following this almost 3-year process from the beginning and believe that the applicant has gone overboard in complying with the conservation easement that my parents placed on the property. And even more importantly, he has honored what I know to be the spirit of what my dad intended when he spent countless hours, a lot of money working with attorneys and talking with family to develop a document that would protect the property into the future from overdevelopment, while allowing a future family to live there and enjoy the many features of the land and all the outdoor activities that we enjoyed on that property. And I was lucky to have lived there. Didn't make sense. But the 3 points I would like to address are as follows. It's ironic that there is a disagreement about the shape of the swimming pool. My dad was originally going to build a rectangle pool, but at the last minute changed it to a free-form pool to match the lake near Tahoe where we have a family cabin. He later so regretted that decision because he was unable to cover it during the winters, and he was unable to have some sort of way to protect it from the leaves coming in because there was no sort of covering. There was no automatic cover for an odd shaped pool. But he built that where the pool is now, he built it rectangle shape because that was the original design, was to do a bigger rectangle because my mom was a lap swimmer. He was unable to cover it, being concerned about the environment. It caused more evaporation. It was more expensive to heat. Also, my mother was a lap swimmer and she would prefer a rectangle pool. And she very many times would tell him, I don't know why we did this shape. We should have had a long rectangle lap pool. The second point is the walking trail. It surprises me that someone would object to a natural trail that involves no grading or moving of any dirt. For most of my life growing up, we had horse trails, many horse trails on the property. My dad was a fierce advocate and protector of trails in Patola Valley. He talked about many times about, actually he did, he built my brother my brother was in go-kart, so we built go-kart trails on the property. He also talked about when they got older and they didn't want to go down their steep driveway, that he was going to build trails on the property so they could enjoy all the western views on the western part of the property. But he passed away before he could get that done. He even had 3 custom benches made that he was going to actually put one of the benches at the oak tree, exactly where the path is that you're talking about. And actually, I have that bench now. It's on one of my trails on my house. But he, exactly from that view, they were going to walk down there and look at the Western Hill view. So I'm just very surprised that someone would object to a walking trail. And, you know, obviously if it was going to be cement or gravel, but I think a trail down there would be exactly what they would have wanted. Okay, I'm on. Finally, sports court. My mother was a tennis player, a big tennis player. She had originally wanted to build a tennis court. In fact, the picture that was up there it was exactly where their plan was to build a tennis court. They were going to build a tennis court right next to your property. And they were going to do it, but the next door neighbor, the people before them, beat them to it and built a tennis court on their property and even set it a little too close to the setback lines. But my parents did a handshake with him and he said, you can borrow our tennis court anytime you want. And they let him build it. That was the neighborly thing. You didn't hire attorneys, you worked it out together. And, but my parents still played at Alpine more than they played at the neighbor's court. But that piece of property, that pasture was where they were going to put a tennis court. Okay, got off track here. Okay. Okay. Okay, I guess that was a time when neighbors were more inclined to support each other without attorneys involved. The new sport court is proposed where the current riding ring is now, which makes perfect sense to swap one recreation sport for another. It's already a graded, flattened, compressed piece of property where we had our riding ring. My parents' intention for the conservation easement wasn't to permanently shutter their house while neighbors fought over minute details regarding whether someone can have a round pool or a rectangle pool, or whether they can go for a walk on their own property. I think the neighbors should be thanking Constantine for the modest plans that he has presented, which are far much less than allowed under the easement rules and are in keeping with the letter and the spirit of what my parents had intended. I urge you to approve the plan as submitted. This is the second homeowner since my siblings and I have sold our parents' home. I can't imagine a better person to carry on my parents' wishes for this property. He has made every effort to reach out to the neighbors and the wider Portola Valley community, and his plans are keeping with what my parents had hoped when they placed the easement on the land for a nice family to live there, enjoy nature, and be a part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Eileen?
Eileen Donahoe, along with John Donahoe. We live at 177 Goya Road. We did not prepare anything. We did write a letter laying out our concerns and also included some photographs to express visually the concerns we have. I think our basic position is somewhat different than what has been expressed here on either side of the equation. I think we started with a slide that showed the visual of the proposed home with story poles from Westridge. And that was the very positive visual. We're here to talk about the visual from the other side of the home, where the story poles actually tell the story of a very significant change and consequential change in our view when we purchased our property and chose to build. And so that's the basic idea. Our primary request is simply to mitigate the changes that have already happened that are independent of building the new home. And I have to comment that we've had multiple conversations with Constantine. He's been to our home twice. We've been to your home maybe twice-ish, something like that. And we haven't felt a lot of responsiveness in terms of our actual concerns, in terms of what's already changed. And so we have a slightly different experience than others have expressed. I will say, I only looked at the easement in the last, somewhere I was sent it in the last couple of days. I think this spirit of there's some language, explicit language in the easement that would be relevant to our concerns related to if development happens, there should be, I don't think it uses the word mitigation, but basically efforts should be made to shield and protect neighbor properties from whatever the development is, even for aesthetic reasons. And so that would be applicable, but frankly, we built our home only, a few years, we finished in 2000, we moved in July of 2019. And in this process that we went through that was very long as well, and costly, we had one neighbor asking us to literally change the footprint, even though we thought we were in the rules. We changed it, and in order to satisfy a different neighbor who was impacted, we did very significant planting that had never been there. And so we're basically just asking not to dramatically change what was there when we chose to purchase and build, is our basic idea. And pickleball, I don't know how loud it is, but that's a concern if it's loud.
I follow her.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just say, we have no problem with the overall project, so we're not, it's just, this is our very specific concern on the screening for our property. And so,
Our experience is a little different.
Anyone else in the audience or online?
John Krosnick, you're available to talk.
Hi,
Hi,
John.
I'm John Krosnick. I live with my wife, Kathy Heaney, at 10 Lysander Way. Only been here 20 years, so we have a limited perspective on life in Portola Valley. But I just wanted to offer my resonance with the comments that have been made by a number of people. Brenda introduced herself as saying she's not a great public speaker, but boy, she's a great public speaker, I thought, and captured lots of useful information. But I also want to resonate with the spirit of her comment and others' comments that Constantine has been a remarkable person in our community. We felt really connected to him thanks to his efforts to build a sense of community here. And I think he is exactly the kind of person who we would like to have in this community, as others have said. And I appreciate the way that he has handled this building project, seeking input and being responsive to requests. I understand that there are points of discomfort for people who live nearby. We live across the opinion from him and see that property and are entirely supportive of this project. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, John. Anyone else?
there are no other hands raised.
Okay.
There is another hand raised?
There are no other hands raised, sorry.
Yeah, so I'll close the public hearing. I've got some questions, of the town attorney at this point. You guys mind if I ask those? Okay. So, as part of the public testimony tonight, there were some questions about, the, some specifics around recreational improvements. Yeah, and I wonder if you could, help us understand, where, the town is the conservator, of the conservation easement.
Sure. So let me try to, I have a number of things here I want to reference. The section dealing with owner's reserved rights is section 4. And in owner's reserved rights, it does say under recreational uses that owners shall be permitted to engage in and permit others to engage in recreational uses of the property, which require no surface alteration or other development of the land. The situation, however, is that in another section, which is and it section 4.1.3, it says that owners shall be permitted to maintain or remodel the existing structures or build new structures, provided that they stay within the square footage, that any remodeling is processed according to the town's regulations, and that they stick to the one-story height, and that no structure is permitted on the area of the property that is currently Lot 101, except for a tool shed. Now, the area where the horse barn and the corral is, that they propose to put the pickleball court and the tennis courts, those are all completely disturbed areas. You were out there today. There's nothing pristine or undisturbed about those. And it's not within the provisions of the conservation easement to require that someone continue to have only one specific type of recreational activity. There's not something that says they have to always have a horse corral and a horse arena and a riding ring, and that they can't have other types of recreational activities. Similarly, with the pool, all of that area where the pool is disturbed, and the new pool will essentially be within the same footprint. So there's nothing that is as somebody else I think said, typically you don't put a conservation easement over property that has been built upon and disturbed. You put a conservation easement over pristine property, which essentially is what was called Lot 101 and still tends to be referred to as that. So our thinking is that the provisions that say no surface alteration and recreational uses really cannot apply to the pickleball court, the tennis court, or the swimming pool. What you're left with is the issue really of the path that goes down to the tree. And as was discussed previously, the path that they're proposing is the same type of path that you find at, parks, you find at Edgewood Nature Preserve. So it's makes sense from the perspective of not having people just wandering all over the property to have them have a designated area. And they're not proposing to put in any sort of concrete or, not permeable type of surface. So while arguably you could say the path shouldn't be built there, you're still going to have people going up and down that hillside. So then the question is, do you have them in one particular place or do you have them roaming all over the place? And the staff determination was it made sense to have them on one decompose whatever it is path. Does that answer your question?
It does kind of, the issue for me, I'm at the question answering. Actually, I've still got a question. How do you resolve the obvious interpretation that others would have, that no surface alteration is allowed, for recreational activities? That's the way the easement is written, is that there's no surface alteration allowed for recreational activities.
That is what that sentence says. There's another area where it talks about grading and it says no material difference. And again, there are a number of places in the conservation easement where the language conflicts or is in tension with each other. So there's a need to resolve what the town thinks is the best resolution. And the town is the holder of the conservation easement.
So is this a decision above our pay grade at the ASCC then?
I think to some degree it is. I think it's more of a council decision. Just like there was one comment, related to, let me see here. There was a comment that Mr. Hannah made about the indemnification requirements. That's not something that is within the purview of this committee. That's something that also would be up to the city council.
Great.
I have a question. Could you comment on clause 14, the amendment that says if circumstances arise under which an amendment to or modification of this conservation easement would be appropriate, owners and town may jointly amend the conservation easement, provided that no amendment shall be allowed that will affect the qualification of this conservation easement. And it continues, any amendment shall be consistent with the purposes of the conservation easement.
So I do think an amendment of the easement would be an option. I would also state that the conservation easement says that it is up to the town to enforce the conservation easement. And in section 5, it says town shall undertake all reasonable efforts to enforce both the rights granted to it and the restrictions imposed upon the property in order to protect the conservation values of the property. But then it goes on to say that there's another section that says in 6.6, town's discretion, enforcement of the terms of this conservation easement shall be at the discretion of the town. And any forbearance by town to exercise its rights under this conservation easement in the event of any breach of any term of this conservation easement by owners shall not be deemed or construed to be a waiver by the town of such term or any subsequent breach. So the town is not required to enforce a provision of this easement if the town concludes it doesn't want to enforce it. So the combination of the rights to amend and the rights to not enforce, I think gives the town some flexibility.
Are there any third-party beneficiaries, to a conservation easement?
I'm sorry, third-party beneficiaries?
Yeah, like a neighbor. That.
So there are no specified third-party beneficiaries. I mean, you could say that, the members of the community are third-party beneficiaries. Oh, excuse me. It specifically says no third-party rights in section 19.5. Sorry. Yes, it says the instrument is made and entered into for the sole benefit and protection of owners and town. And no person or entity other than the parties hereto and their respective successors and assigned shall have any right of action under the conservation easement or any right to enforce the terms and provisions thereof.
Okay.
One more question for you. Could you comment on 4.4 easements, where it says owners shall be permitted to honor existing easements for utilities, riding and hiking trails, and any geological or other stations, and to grant new easements for such purposes if approved by the town. So would that allow us to approve the pathways that Mr. Garicki would like to put on the path, on the plot, on the property?
Well, the pathway is not an easement because the pathway, I mean, you're not going to open that pathway to the public. The pathway is really for the property owners and the property owners' guests. So these easements, well, 4.4 is recognizing that there are various utility easements, that there are some riding and hiking trails. Basically, those are on the periphery of the property. And if there are any other geological things that require an easement. Now, under this provision, if there was a need for some brand new type of easement that served public purposes, this allows that to be done. But the pathway down to that oak tree is not something that would be an easement.
Thank you.
Can you clarify a little more as well? So these were 3 separate lots. So there were easements along the shared property lines for the utilities. Those are still shown on that. There's also the West Ridge Trail that runs right at the front of the property line. So that is also envisioning if we ever need to expand that trail or the trail needs to slightly change for whatever, that's what that would be addressing.
Thank you.
Vanna, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Well, let's start our deliberations. Rebecca, you want to start for us?
Okay, so I feel like the project is wonderful. I think it's a beautiful house. I feel that it is fitting in completely with the spirit of the conservation easement. When I read, the baseline documentation report that accompanied the easement that was created, I think, a couple years after the actual easement was signed, it described that the land, this conservation land, has a rich mix of oak woodland and grassland that is important for wildlife. This plan definitely maintains that and protects that. It says this scenic landscape of rolling hills, open pastures, and oak woodland is visible from West Ridge Drive and from a multi-use public trail. The property is visible from Windy Hill Open Space Preserve and many surrounding areas. These scenic views preserve the historic appearance and rural character of the area from its early days as depicted in historic photographs. This was created with the lanes, you know, while they were still on the property just a couple years after they actually put this easement in place. And I feel that this project really does that beautifully. It's reducing the size of the actual structures. It's fitting into the property, it's fitting into the hill, and it's protecting the portions of the property that are the scenic portions, the rolling hills and the open space. I think I think people should have the right to have pathways on their properties, to be able to enjoy their properties, not to be walking in the mud during the winter, and it does rain here occasionally. So I'm okay with the pathways as well. My only one question is the pathway that goes around the fence in the back of the house where the pool is, that sort of large fenced area, whether or not that fence will kind of disappear into the landscape because of the landscaping that's on the other side, that's on the inside of that fence, or whether it's going to be more visible or not. That's just something to kind of think about. In general, I think it is either protected or it will look like, you know, the open 3-wood rustic fence that's there now. I think there's a few issues that do need to be dealt with. The views for the Donahoes are pretty open. They're pretty blunt, if you will. It's definitely having a pretty big impact on their view of Windy Hill that they didn't have to deal with before. So I think some sort of solution needs to be found to put a replacement tree in there. I know Constantine has 3 trees there and he's planning for 2 large bushes. But it seems that there may be many years before that actually provides any real true screening from both the construction and from the house. So I think some type of solution needs to be found, whether it's installing right now a much bigger tree that will provide, or 2 trees that will provide that needed screen protection now, kind of before the construction starts, with appropriate protection, might be a good idea to get started on that. I don't think the property should be required to give up the right to build a vineyard. I mean, that was definitely in the easement. I do have a concern about the pool equipment pad. I think it's not in a good spot. It's a very visible spot from both the neighbors as well as from the house. So I think that should be moved to the side somehow to just hide it. I think the owner would find that also to be the case. Once their house is built, they're definitely not going to want to be looking over their beautiful infinity edge of their pool and see their pad. That I think they will agree on that once it's done. I mean, those are my main things right now. I'll see what everyone else
Anything
says.
about lighting?
Well, I did look at the lighting. It did seem like there was quite a bit of lighting around the paths on the backyard, but again, the scale on these plans is pretty tiny. So I think the actual distance between the lights in the pathways is actually appropriate number.
Yeah.
So I think it's from a safety pump, it's probably necessary. As long as the lights are, on switches. So no, I think I'm okay with the lighting, yeah.
So I'll jump in. Constantine, I think I'm so excited for you because I know that this is really your dream, the house. And I think that it's expressing itself really beautifully. So I'm excited about you. And I also want to say that he is a gardener. As much as I look at the landscape plan is very detailed and complex, and you're going to have your hands full, pal. I mean, so you're going to have some gardening to do. But if you do it, it could be wonderful. I also feel like the intent of the project is to kind of respect the conservation easement. So I think in the bigger picture, I get that. And I mean, I knew the lanes and I think what they tried to do is wonderful in the language of this. The pathways. I live across from Windy Hill, and about 20 years ago, hikers started going from the trail right up the front of the mountain. And there was a scar. I mean, it left a vertical zipper down the front. And I actually got involved with Midpen and I said, put a sign down there and stop that, because you were looking up at this straight line. That's the only thing I want to see not happen with the path that goes down to that bench. Either there's no path or maybe it's not right down the middle. I just hate the people who look in on it, that they're not looking at a zipper down the middle of that hillside. So that's all I want to say about that path. Just other things. I mean, the deer fencing, Constantine, I hope you like it, when they're both together. I mean, you've done this wonderful thing, but for me aesthetically, and I'm trying not to jump in here, I think that you may not in the end like that. Your entry gate, I was hoping when I was thinking of the entry gate that it was just going to be the horse fencing that comes around, that is that expression of the lane property. The entry experience, that entry gate, it looks like anybody else's old entry gate. I think you can do better than that. And I won't do anything aesthetic about it. Again, I won't say anything like that. My thing is the view from the Donahoes. I've been to their house, obviously a lot. And I was there when they bought it and you could not see the house. And then something happened, your trees were gone, something happened, but that needs to be mitigated. And that needs to be mitigated with a big tree or several big trees, and just to stop that. And so I think that really should happen. And I think it should happen now in the next month, November, so that you get years of growth on these things. Because even a big tree, it's going to take a long time to fill that space. So I want to see that happen. What are my other kind of frantic notes? every time you put pathways in, every time you disturb the land, you invite invasives. And, you know, there are detrichia up at the top of the hill. There's all kinds of things. So you being a gardener, you're going to have to keep your eyes, you know, on invasives if you're going to be putting a lot of pathways in. The same thing with the Epsteins. When we were working up at their house, there was detrichia on site when we got there, and we pointed it out and they got rid of it. I mean, and it's going to be a game changer for you guys to have done that work. I feel like there's a little too much lighting, but I also look at the scale. I mean, they must be far apart, but you know, it's what you do with it. You just keep the lights off, you know, until you're going down to the pool or whatever. You know, you either have a switch or you have a switch with a timer. So when the goes on, they're on for 5 minutes. So lot of pool lighting, but nobody can look into your pool. So that's all right. With rail. And I think that's start of my comments, and we can come back and visit things after Carter talks.
Thank you. I like your project. I think it does meet what I would expect Bill and Jean to appreciate. I think, you know, it's a strange conservation easement, you know, and I'd like staff, you know, to resolve it, you know, with an amendment. Because as I've read it, and I've read it, you know, probably a dozen times for different people, you know, who are looking at the property, that there were that condition, you know, or that requirement, you know, for the surface alteration, you know, was, you know, really kind of a huge stumbling block, you know, to adaptively reusing, you know, stuff on the property. I think the layout and the arrangement, you know, of, you know, the tennis court, the pickleball courts, you know, the ADU and so forth, you know, on that flat pad, you know, where the barn and riding ring is a good reuse, adaptive reuse, you know, that to me is in keeping with the conservation easement. You know, the fact that the conservation easement didn't call out, you know, the improved areas versus the natural areas, you know, is really where the giant stumbling block is. Because I don't think that, I really don't have, you know, giant issues, you know, with the design or with the reuse of the property. But I find it hard, you know, as an ASCC member, you know, to know that the conservation easement is written the way that it is, and, you know, approving the project when I don't believe that it's in compliance. I think it complies with the intent, but it doesn't comply with the actual words. So, and I don't believe it's at the ASCC level, you know, that decision can be made. I think we could make a recommendation, you know, that it probably is, you know, but it's for, you know, either the town council or at least the planning commission, you know, to opine on that. I think the design of the building works really well, except for, you know, now that the trees were lost, you know, in that opening to the north side. And, you know, like my fellow commissioners, I believe that that portion, you know, even though it's mostly where the existing house is, needs substantial screening. And because the slope is, you know, sloping down so dramatically from the house, the volunteer trees eventually will catch up, you know, but it might be 20 or 30 years. You know, and I do believe that some adjustment, you know, either moving, you know, that the 2 bedrooms and the kitchen, forward, the attached ADU, kind of towards the south, would give you some more space, at that, upper portion of the property, to end up, with really good screening. Cause I think that, the loss of those trees, has dramatically, changed that view. I agree with, Rebecca that, I don't understand why a vineyard would be, somehow the adaptive reuse of the property would change that portion of the conservation easement. I continue to think that there's probably a better location, for the pool equipment, pad, and want to encourage that. I similarly, felt the same way as Dana, regarding, the path to the oak tree, that's some kind of a serpentine, path that, helps mitigate the slope, and doesn't create essentially a vertical path, as you look at that, from offsite would be better. Weirdly, I share completely, Dana's position regarding the entry gate, because it looked like it didn't really belong. Because I think that the house has been sympathetic to a style that the gate doesn't really reflect, that either it should be much more like the, the split rail fence, or something more like, the architecture of the house. And I know this wasn't proposed, but I continue to support the removal of poison oak in all locations, because guys like me don't like poison oak, and I don't think anybody really does.
Has fall color.
Well, it can have fall color all you want.
I don't, whatever. Love poison.
So, and on the lighting, I think there's too many lights. I think the lighting on the building is appropriate. The path lighting, to me, needs to be moderated, as the paths in the garden, move further away from the building. Perfect. Yeah, it's really the paths, that are further away from the building.
That one.
Yeah,
Do you
well,
do you know what the scale is on that, what we're looking at? What's the
they
distance
look like they're
between
about
each?
30 feet. Pool is 20 feet wide. So they're about 40 feet. It isn't really about the distance between them, Constantine. It's about whether, those like that, can you go back? Right there. So the path that is out towards the west, is one that I think exposes a lot of lights. And the path that is, to the east, I'm trying to figure out what that, not that, Brandon, right there, those lights. I was trying to figure out what those are, if that's a normal access path, it's kind of, it's not really a, go ahead, Constantine.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think the lights on the west, I could see like maybe taking one out to kind of give it more spacing to naturalize it gradually. On the east side, that is what we call the COVID path. So that this is where, if you see the main image, there's the gate there. And so basically for the next COVID, this is where the visitors would go to the back of the property for a gathering without going through the house. So that is actually a path that will be, I think, important. Again, it won't be lit on a regular basis, but at the times when there's a party, I think it'll be quite important that, that they can walk there to the event with some decent lighting, but
Well,
it's not
you're
overwhelming.
not gonna have much of an event because you don't have much parking anymore. Which, it's really the, for me, the path lights, when they get strung together, from a long distance, it's not much light, but it, to me, I'd support the COVID path, a lot more than I would, the path that goes out to the west, because I do think that, it really is just about, reducing the impact, if they were potentially on for a long time. So, so my question to, Terrence, is, should we, continue this so that, the conservation easement could be resolved? Because I think it's unfair for us, to try to give an approval to something that for me, I support, except that I can't support it with the knowing, what the conservation easement says.
Well, the town's counselor, the town's attorney has indicated that with the exception of the path out, and please, I hate putting words in the mouth of a lawyer, so they're gonna correct me if I'm wrong, I know. If the exception of the path that goes out towards the oak tree, that it's consistent with the, conservation easement. Is that not, what you were indicating? Valerie?
So I do believe that the areas that are not pristine, which are already disturbed, which are the areas that involve the barn riding rink versus the two ball courts and the pool area, old pool, new pool. I think those are in fact consistent with the conservation easement. I think the bigger issue from some people is the issue of the paths, primarily the path across lot 101, because that was the lot that was not developed in any way, shape, or form.
So what I was getting to with that, thank you very much for that clarification. What I was getting to with that is the commission could approve the project without those elements, rather than having to wait until a change went up to the council, all the way to the town council to consider it. I don't believe it's a planning commission action. I believe it would have to be a town council action to amend that. So, the ASCC could decide to consider the project without those elements that are in question, and then the applicant could either pursue changes as a part of through the town, or just accept the change as the ASCC put forward. Did that answer your question?
I think it does, except for the no surface alteration for recreation. Which, that one's tough. Yes, Constantine.
As we mentioned, this is something we started off the very project with. Dylan Parker, had worked with Sonsini's and the conservation easement on it. So that was literally like the very first question that was asked about that. And actually, let me give you, there was Valerie mentioned that there are sometimes, there's interpretation needed sometimes in the conservation easement, and that's why there is this paragraph. If there is differences of interpretation that the parties shall meet. And Valerie and John, had a discussion. That was the parents, I think, facilitated that mediation session so that we could discuss those differences. When we started the project, the guidance from both Dylan and Laura Russell, and actually that's an email that this path is okay, and the other part, because when they interpret, I was thinking about it because you asked about the surface alteration, the interpretation is not that is that the contours stay the same. So that's why we were guided in the pre-meetings, make sure the pool and that is on the same, and that the paths aren't like creating a new like incline, but that it follows the natural contour. So the surface alteration is keeping the contours the same. So that's how we were guided. In terms of how the easement sometimes is different. So let me tell you the example of when I first moved there. I think at some point Andy said, "Oh, you got to cut the grass, right?" And so I was like, "Oh, what is that?" It's like, okay, by July 4th, you got to cut all the grass. And so I was looking in the conservation easement and said, "No motorized vehicles off trail." And so I was like, wow, so how do I do this all by hand? That seems a little unrealistic. So I contacted the fire chief and asked him, and he said, well, yeah, you could just do the 50 feet that's required, but I think, using a tractor, should be good, but I can't decide that. I need to go to Howard, the director of public works. So it got forwarded to Howard, and Howard, at some point said, I can't decide, that needs to go to Laura. So eventually Laura decided that it's okay to use a tractor, and also Brenda said, during the time when her parents managed the property, they also used tractors. So she said that this phrase about the no motorized vehicles off trail were more around, not wanting to have ATVs that cruise up and down the hill and leave tracks and things like that. So I just wanted to share what the definition of surface alteration is that the town has been guiding us. We've spent 2 years, working towards that. So I'm really hoping that we can, if there is some conditions or some things we need to work out with staff in terms of the gate or the pool equipment pad or other things, that we could finally move forward with this, of course, working with staff on some of these issues, the screening, et cetera.
I'd like to see this move forward tonight too. I think we're going into winter. I just think that we should do what we can to, and this has been a long process. At least get them started.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to address part of what the applicant just put forward when it comes to the trails. It is staff's opinion, not the ASCC, that the improvements as proposed are consistent with the easement. That is what, and the town's attorney has agreed with that. In sum total of the impact, we do believe that's the case. However, it is your call to decide that. So I just wanted to be clear that is our recommendation, but also understanding that it is the three of your call to decide whether or not it's consistent or not.
Through the chair, I did also want to kind of discuss, this is related to the recommended condition of approval against the vineyard. And so the conservation easement does explicitly allow the vineyard, but it also allows a driveway to the vineyard on lot 101. So this is that area that the conservation easement is saying to protect, but it's allowing the driveway in the vineyard. So staff's recommendation with that is, with the trail being added, that impact is significantly less than a vineyard and driveway over to that area. And so that was why staff had recommended that condition of approval, is that it's still keeping with the intent of the conservation easement. Otherwise, the applicant could say, okay, I'll put a driveway and put a vineyard on. That's going to be a lot more impactful to the scenic preservation of lot 101 than their proposed trail. And so that was staff's thinking behind that. And, staff is always, welcome to modifications. If the trail is removed, the authorization for the vineyard can be reinstated at a later point. That is a condition that the commission could consider modifying. But that is staff's reasoning behind it and why we also feel that specific trail is consistent with that. Because again, the conservation easement, it says no surface modification, but sure, let's build a driveway across lot 101. So it's kind of the conflict.
How do you all feel?
I agree with Dana that a big chunk of this project can move forward, should be able to move forward. And if there's a few things that need to be resolved with staff or even have to go to town council for a little tweak that, I think we should move the bulk of it forward because we have no major issues with the bulk of it.
Make some kind of a motion.
Sure.
And
Well, let me, discuss one of the motions that I would, suggest is that, while the ASCC supports, the site planning strategy, and the tennis court, and the pickleball court, as proposed, I'm speaking for myself, but I would say the ASCC, would recommend, an amendment to the easement, to clarify, the intent, relative, to, sports, sports and recreation and, surface improvements. And, that be a condition of approval, before the construction, of, the tennis court, before the issuance of the building permit, for the, well, for the two courts.
that's a good start.
Okay.
Go.
No. You guys are gonna have to work at it.
I would say the resolution of the screening for the internal ADU section of the house needs to be resolved with staff and with maybe one ASCC member,
Okay.
You need, put it screening trees.
the screening trees,
Yes.
yes.
And I think in the condition, I want that to happen ASAP,
Mhm.
in November.
Can I make, Mr. Chair, can I make 2 points? When it comes to the conservation easement, one way you could address this is to, those elements of the project that are at, in your opinion, in conflict with the conservation easement, we could put a condition of approval on the project that they would have to go to the town council for an amendment. So you could make a motion tonight, but include that as a condition.
That's what I am suggesting. Yes.
Great. And the other issue is I do recommend that you direct, if you're going to make changes like the screening, that you direct staff to deal with it. Staff is happy to coordinate with individual ASCC members, but you shouldn't have a subcommittee of one, in my opinion. But if you can direct staff to do it, we'd be happy to consult with ASCC members. But we understand we're understanding your intent, and your motion will be even clearer. But I just wanted to be clear about that a subcommittee of one person or even two is a little burdensome,
No problem.
and would suggest
We
the other way.
appreciate, the clarification of our process.
I would like to be involved though in terms of helping select materials, plant materials, a tree.
Okay. So you guys want to finish up the, the motion?
I would also like to see the zipper path.
Serpentine, serpentine.
Just, yeah,
And through the
those are my
chair,
two biggies.
just trying to clarify, so the blue on the screen is that trail that you're discussing that kind of goes towards that oak tree. So it does weave a bit more. Are you wanting more? Can you please just kind of,
Yeah, I mean, all I saw was just a straight line. What do you think? You think it's curvy enough?
Well, I think-
It's hard to tell without, I think it's the sort of thing that's going to be on site, that you lay out a tube and you lay out a hose and kind
I
of see
think
how
you
it
guys
looks.
can do it. You know where we're going. We don't want a zipper in the hillside. So if you could just,
staff can definitely just, that's why we wanted to ask, is we want that clear direction. And, you know, I do also know they're trying to follow the contours so that they don't have to do grading. So doing too big of a serpentine, they're gonna have to
Yeah,
start
we don't want to
cutting.
zigzag and.
So, we can definitely work with them as staff to address that, but just wanted that clarification.
I'm
Thank
sure
you.
it can be done well.
I think the issue is really in the first few yards after you get out of the fence. You know, once it gets onto that plateau, you know, that's, you know, really flat. So it's, you know, kind of coming down, you know, through the gate. Okay. So Rebecca, you want to assemble a motion, please?
I like Terrence's words.
You want Terrence to make the motion
That was.
or
Do
suggest
we
a
want to
motion?
say anything about the pool equipment pad or the entry gate?
Yes. I think these are things that, you know, will get better, you know, and it will help move the project forward.
So I would make a motion to approve the project as designed with the following conditions of improvement. We require the installation of screening trees and bushes this year for the internal ADU portion of the home in the north side. We require the pathway to be more gently serpentined. We require the pool equipment pad to be moved to a less visible location. And we would request that the entry gate be made less formal. And then was there a request to also remove a couple lights or to make fewer lights for the western edge of the pathway?
Two fewer or one fewer, some
Yeah.
direction would help.
Fewer. 6 fewer,
That's all. I think two
like all of them.
or three, every other one, so.
And just, I didn't think we were gonna go down the gate road, but you know, it's again in deference to the lanes, make it laney. Just with the split rail fence, I mean, just bring it across the driveway. I think it would be so wonderful. Yeah, I don't. It could go on.
And then the portion about the amendment to the easement,
Recommended by town.
recommend that we go to town council, that the applicant take the project to town council to get an amendment made to clarify the intent of the easement. What,
I think there's several areas, that, the town's attorney would provide clarity.
So, I can work with Mr. Hannah on, coming up with a potential amendment, and then we can see what the city council thinks.
Yeah, the issue for us, I think, is to not change the intent, but to clarify.
with
It-
respect to surface alteration for the recreational uses and for the trails.
I guess I have a question for the applicant. Sorry to interrupt your motion making. If the elements of the project that were not subject to the conservation easement were allowed to go forward while you pursued that, would that be helpful to you? Would you rather wait to have the town council review an amendment to the conservation easement?
Yes, it would definitely be helpful to start, getting building permits, but also we're trying to select a general contractor for that. We want to make sure we know what we're actually building. So, so I think that would be important. I also wanted to note that, as part of the staff report, there's the Conservation Committee, which is kind of one of the main groups that's tasked with, ensuring conservation, had raised several issues in their comment letter. And I believe like a month ago, they after reviewing our responses to that, they have said they're, satisfied with all those, responses.
And to clarify, the Conservation Committee did originally try to do the town attorney's job and try to interpret the easement. And so they did withdraw some of those comments to default to our legal team. So there was a bunch, they were trying to provide guidance on what the conservation easement meant. But they did kind of withdraw those and focus on some more of the kind of substantive, actually project related. And so they're defaulting to the town council, and we did get through the town council's opinion.
No, you can't say anything more. You're done. Yeah, go ahead.
There was a couple of you who expressed that it didn't seem right to, because there's in the draft conditions, there's the one about giving up the potential to do a vineyard in the future, and I heard some of you say that didn't really make a lot of sense. Staff explained kind of the reasoning for it. So I just want you guys to sort of, as part of the motion, just decide what you're gonna do with that. Because right now, in the draft conditions, it is in there. So you could remove it or you could change it as parents. Make sure it doesn't fall through.
I would recommend removing that condition, but personally, I would not want to have a road. So I would be okay with the vineyard, but I would not want to allow a road in place, in addition to a vineyard. But
I agree.
I agree.
So then your condition would be, so your motion would be to remove the vineyard from the prohibition. The prohibition would only be the driveway.
Is that in our motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we at a point where I'm seconding the motion?
I think that got all of the issues. You
got it all?
have your checklist?
Yeah, I think it went through everything, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I second your motion.
Okay.
Through the chair, sorry. One last thing was we were seeking the commission's kind of guidance on the impervious surface. So I know that's related to the surface alterations, but if you want to default that again also to the city council or town council with the amendment to that allowing a higher impervious surface than what would be base allowed under town code. Existing site already has more than what would be allowed. And interpreting that the conservation easement granted that amount. Just wanted to add that in there since that was a question from staff to the.
I support the amount proposed, since
I
it's
support it.
less than.
I support the amount as well because it's less than the existing, and the reality is that this used to be 3 lots, in which case the impervious coverage would have been much, 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 much bigger.
Okay.
So we add that to the condition that we allow the
I don't think we have to make that a condition. That's part of the approval. So I don't think it actually has to be identified. So it's been motioned and seconded. We don't have anybody on Zoom. Any, commissioners on Zoom, so we can do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0.
Mr. Chair,
Started.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to clarify one point. In terms of going back to amending the conservation easement, that does mean that the ASCC recommends that the changes be made to allow the project to move forward.
That is correct.
Okay.
But what it also means, from, I think the SEC's, point of view, is that all portions of the project that aren't, related, to the sport courts, and the trail, going down onto lot 101, would be, would move forward. So moving forward with the building permit, application and including the issuance of those permits.
It wouldn't hurt to make a motion to that effect. Just in addition to the approval, the recommendation that the change be made as you just described.
So I'll move, that, in addition to, Rebecca's motion, that all portions of the project except those, related to the conflicts, to the resolution of the conflicts and the conservation easement, would continue to move forward, including the issuance of the building permits.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, 3-0. We're. No.
Okay.
I just have a question
I'm hungry.
too.
I'm hungry.
I ate right before.
I got the pot stickers, but
No, I just wanted to pick up on
they're
what.
cold now.
what are you-
Everyone can have it except John Donahoe because he doesn't like coriander.
So how specifically, in order to be able to move forward with this portion that might involve the town council amending this to make sure this. Valerie had suggested of drafting that together with. So is that part of it then? 'Cause I want to make sure concretely we know how to move forward on that piece, because I know on the one hand, we can move forward with the building permits and getting the bids and the contractors, but I also want to make sure what concretely would be the next step.
Mr. Chair, I can address
betcha,
that as, from a staff perspective, absolutely, a meeting to discuss modifications and then, presenting, and then moving forward to present that to the town council. We do have to discuss whether it needs to as an intermediate step, go to the planning commission first, so I can't speak to it exactly. But that would be the first step to come to an amendment.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
let's move on. Next item on the agenda, is commission staff, commissioner reports.
Everyone's leaving.
We're not that interesting.
So Emily's introduction.
I want to know who Emily is.
So we don't need to keep this conservation easement. We're done. The ASCC is done
Correct,
with this stuff.
correct.
I was gonna hang on to it if we needed to talk about it again, but, okay, never mind.
Go-
Out of here.
Terrence, please introduce Emily to us.
I have one up for the record comment. I did not indicate when I took roll call that Commissioner Dixon was recused. I forgot to mention that. So just for the record, I want to be clear that Commissioner Dixon is not here because she has a recusal for that item.
Okay.
And secondly, I wanted to introduce Emily Lane, ironically enough, who's joined the town as an associate planner, as a permanent
Yay.
in-house staff. So we'll be able to provide more services to our residents right in-house without having to send out. Of course, Emily will be working closely with Good City and on their projects, and particularly as she comes up to speed, but we're very excited to have her joining us.
Yes. Welcome.
How do you spell your last name?
L-A-N.
Oh, the regular way.
Not related though to Brenda.
No further comments to bring to the commission.
Okay,
There's no staff reports then? Oh, but could I get an update on the response to HCD, what the schedule is for that and how fast we can get that done? So since we're still under builder's remedy right now?
That is something the town council, the mayor and vice mayor in setting the agenda are still discussing. So it's hopefully going to, well, it's very, very, very hopeful that it goes to the town council in November to make a decision on there are a few major courses of action that they could take, a few major sort of branches that the town council could take on. And they have to make a determination. So I'll be preparing a staff report for them to give direction to staff on how to proceed.
And then that will go from there to planning and then back to town, or just the town council will be able to handle
Well,
it
if-
all?
Again, there's a couple ways we could address the comments that came from HCD. If it's, I don't want to go into details, but there are a couple ways. One method might be more direct, but almost any change that meets HCD's requirements is going to ultimately require a change in the zoning that was put forward before. So of course, it comes to the planning commission and council. And if it's got a site related impact, it'll come to the ASCC as well. But sorry, I have to be so vague. It is up to town council to sort of
Okay.
set the path forward.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is, 5, it's the minutes of October 14th. Anyone have any changes, adjustments, corrections?
No, I was fine here. Move to approve. Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, 3-0. Next item is adjournment. So we're adjourned.
Weird. Woo-hoo!